My parents sold my inherited home to pay my sister's debt, so I walked away forever. Now they beg for me to return and help again. I'm a 29-year-old guy, and the house I grew up in meant everything to me. It wasn't just a building, it was a piece of my soul. Every corner of that old brick place carried a memory. My grandfather teaching me how to ride a bike on the cracked driveway. The smell of my mom's cooking on Sunday mornings. The creak of the hallway floor that I used to hate, but now would give anything to hear again. That house wasn't just where I lived, it was where I became who I am. When my grandfather passed, he left the house to me. He said it was because he knew I'd take care of it, that I'd honor what he built with his own hands. My parents agreed at the time, at least that's what they said. But I could see something flicker behind their smiles. My sister, Lily, didn't even try to hide her reaction. She stormed out of the room, saying it was unfair and typical grandpa favoritism. Lily's always been different. She's the type who burns through money like it's air and somehow always lands on her feet, usually thanks to mom and dad's wallet. Meanwhile, I worked 2 jobs through college, built my career from scratch, and never once asked for help. My parents always said they were proud of me, but it was the kind of pride that came with expectations. When Lily messed up, they'd rush to fix it. When I struggled, they'd say, "You'll figure it out. You always do." I didn't resent them. Not yet, anyway. I told myself that's just how families are. Some people need more help. Others give more. Still, as I looked at the old house after the funeral, I felt this strange mix of love and unease. I had inherited something priceless. Not just walls and wood, but trust. And deep down, I had no idea that same trust would be the very thing they'd use to betray me. After my grandfather's funeral, things quieted down, or at least that's what I thought. A few weeks later, we gathered in the lawyer's office to hear the reading of his will. I remember the heavy air of that room, the smell of old books and leather chairs, and the faint ticking of a wall clock that made every second feel like an eternity. When the lawyer said, "The house goes solely to his grandson, Daniel," my heart stopped. I wasn't expecting it, but a part of me felt, like Grandpa knew how much that place meant to me. The silence afterward was deafening. My mom forced a smile and said, "That's wonderful, honey." My dad nodded stiffly. But Lily, she laughed, short, bitter sound. "Of course," she said, "the perfect son gets the perfect prize." "Lily," my dad warned, but she kept going. "You all act like I'm the problem, but this just proves it." "He's always been the favorite." I tried to calm her down. "It's not about favorites. Grandpa wanted the house to stay in the family." She cut me off. "Yeah, in your name figures." The rest of the day was awkward. My parents assured me they were fine with it, but there was tension simmering beneath every word. A few days later, Mom pulled me aside and said, "Sweetheart, we just need to sort out some paperwork for tax purposes. It'll be easier if we handle the property documents together." I didn't think twice. These were my parents. Why wouldn't I trust them? I signed whatever forms they gave me, barely reading the fine print. Looking back, that was the moment I handed them the keys not just to the house, but to my peace of mind. At the time, I thought I was being responsible. But what I didn't know was that I'd just set the stage for the biggest betrayal of my life. At first, life moved on. I focused on my job, paid off my student loans, and started making plans to renovate the old house. It gave me purpose, a project that connected me to my grandfather's memory. But just as I started getting ahead, Lily started to fall apart again. She'd always been impulsive, but this time was worse. Her new boyfriend, Travis, was the kind of guy who wore fake designer watches and talked big about business ventures that never existed. Within months, Lily was calling me, crying about credit card bills and unexpected expenses. It helped once. I couldn't just ignore her, but it was like pouring water into a bottomless pit. Mom would call late at night, her voice trembling. "She's drowning, Daniel. Please, just a little more help. You know how fragile she is." I'd rub my temples, staring at the ceiling. "Mom, I can't keep bailing her out. She needs to take responsibility." "But you've always been the stable one," she said. "You can handle it." "She can't." That sentence hit me harder than I expected. It wasn't the first time I'd heard it, but it still cut deep. I was tired of being the stable one. It felt less like a compliment and more like a sentence. Like my role in the family was to carry everyone else's mistakes. A week later, Lily posted pictures online, a trip to Miami. New clothes, dinner at some upscale restaurant. I stared at my phone, numb. All that help had gone straight into her next thrill. That's when I decided I was done. No more money. No more rescues. I thought setting that boundary would finally bring peace. But instead, it was the spark that set everything ablaze. It happened on an ordinary Tuesday. I was sitting at my desk, halfway through a report when my phone rang. It was my mother, her voice trembling. "Daniel, we need to talk." Something in her tone made my stomach drop. "What happened?" I asked. There was a pause, long, shaky, and suffocating. Then she said it. "The house. It's gone." I froze. "What do you mean, gone?" "It's been sold," she whispered. "We had to do it, Daniel." "You don't understand," Lily was. My chair screeched against the floor as I stood up. "You sold it? Without even telling me?" "That house was mine." She started crying. "We didn't have a choice. Your sister was in serious debt, Daniel. People were threatening her. We had to act fast." I felt my pulse hammering in my ears. I could barely breathe. "You had no right. Grandpa left it to me. It wasn't yours to sell." That's when Dad got on the phone. His voice was firm, almost defensive. "We're family. Family helps each other. You're being selfish, son. We used the power of attorney. You signed it months ago. We just needed to save her." My hands went cold. That stupid document, the one I'd signed without reading, they'd used it to sell my inheritance. "My grandfather's legacy you stole from me," I said quietly. My voice cracked halfway through, and I hated how small I sounded. Dad sighed like I was the one being unreasonable. "Don't make this harder than it needs to be. You're doing fine. Your sister needed us." I hung up. I couldn't listen to another word. That night, I drove to the old street. The house lights were off. A for sale sign had already been replaced with sold. Someone else's name was on the mailbox. And as I stood there in the dark, staring at the place that once held my entire childhood, one thing became painfully clear. My family had finally chosen who really mattered to them. And it wasn't me. The next few days were a blur, a mix of disbelief, anger, and grief that felt heavier than any funeral I'd ever attended. I didn't just lose a house. I lost the last piece of my grandfather, the one person who ever made me feel valued. I stopped answering calls, shut off my phone for days, and tried to make sense of what they'd done. But denial only lasts so long. When I finally turned my phone back on, the first thing I saw was a social media post from Lily. She was grinning ear to ear, holding a glass of champagne next to a brand new car with the caption, "Fresh start, fresh wheels." Can't thank my family enough. My hands were shaking. The comments were full of people congratulating her, calling her resilient and lucky to have such supportive parents. My blood boiled. She hadn't just ruined me, she was celebrating it. I called my parents. Dad answered, sounding irritated, like I was the one causing trouble. "Why did you do this?" I demanded. "You sold my home to pay for that?" "Watch your tone," he said coldly. "We did what we had to. Family comes first. Family." I snapped. "You mean Lily comes first?" Mom jumped in, her voice trembling. "Please, Daniel, don't turn this into a fight. Your sister was in trouble. We all have to make sacrifices." "My sacrifice was never your choice to make," I said. Choking on the words, they told me to stop being dramatic, that I was making them feel guilty for helping their daughter. That's when it hit me. They didn't even see it as wrong. In their eyes, it was just another time I had to be the understanding one. I hung up, shaking. For the first time in my life, I realized the truth. Love in my family wasn't unconditional. It was transactional. And I was the only one who kept paying the bill that night. I swore to myself that this would be the last time I'd let them take something from me. But I had no idea. The worst was still coming. A few days later, I sat in a quiet office across from a lawyer, my hands clasped so tightly my knuckles were white. I told him everything, how my parents convinced me to sign the papers. how they sold the house without telling me, how I only found out after it was gone. He listened, nodding slowly, then leaned back in his chair. "I'm sorry, Daniel," he said. "Legally, there's not much you can do. The power of attorney gave them full rights to act on your behalf." The words hit like a sledgehammer. "So they can just get away with it," he sighed. "Technically, yes. It's unethical, but unless you can prove intent to defraud, the court will likely side with them." I left the office feeling hollow. They hadn't just betrayed me emotionally, they'd stolen something sacred, and the law was on their side. That night, I called my parents one last time, hoping for some kind of accountability, even an apology. Dad answered. "I heard you went to a lawyer," he said flatly. "You trying to sue your own family now?" "I just wanted to understand what you did," I replied quietly. "You sold my home, Dad, my home. You need to stop seeing it as yours," he snapped. "We did it for all of us. We saved your sister's life. She's not dying, she's irresponsible." I shouted, "And you rewarded her for it." There was silence. Then Mom's voice came through, soft and pleading. "Sweetheart, please. You're letting money come between us." Money? That's all they thought it was. Not legacy, not trust, not love, just money. I told them I was done. "You made your choice," I said. "You picked her over me. Don't call me again." Dad muttered something about me being ungrateful, but I'd already hung up. My chest felt tight, but for the first time in years, I wasn't bending. I was done trying to be the mature one. Still, as the silence settled, I couldn't ignore one truth that haunted me. Cutting them off didn't feel like victory. It felt like grief. The weeks that followed were a blur of silence and second-guessing. I moved into a small apartment across town. 1 bedroom, peeling paint, and a leaky faucet that sang every night like a broken metronome. It wasn't much, but at least it was mine. No memories, no ghosts, no manipulation. Just walls that didn't lie to me at first. I thought cutting them off would bring relief. But loneliness crept in like a slow poison. The quiet wasn't peaceful. It was heavy. Every time my phone buzzed, I half expected a message from Mom. Something like, "We're sorry, can we talk?" But it never came. Instead, the calls I got were from relatives asking why I was punishing my parents. Word had spread fast, and of course, I was the villain of their version. One night, I ran into an old family friend at the grocery store. She looked uncomfortable as she said, "Your mom told me you've been having anger issues." I laughed bitterly. "Yeah," I said. "It's amazing what losing your inheritance can do to your mood." At work, I tried to bury myself in projects. But even there, the pain followed me. I'd catch myself zoning out, remembering the creak of my old bedroom floor, the smell of the lemon tree in the backyard. That house wasn't just property, it was my anchor. Without it, I felt adrift. But slowly something shifted. I started cooking again, reading late into the night, walking in the rain without checking my phone. It was the first time in my life I wasn't carrying someone else's burden. I missed the idea of family, but I didn't miss them. One night, I stood by my tiny apartment window, looking out at the city lights and said out loud, "This is what freedom costs." It wasn't comforting, but it was honest. Still, deep down, I knew this wasn't over. People like my parents, like Lily, don't learn lessons until the world forces them to. And I had a feeling that day was coming sooner than any of them expected. About 6 months after I cut contact, I got a call from an unknown number. Normally I wouldn't have answered, but something in me hesitated, and that hesitation changed everything. It was my cousin Mark, his voice low and tense. "Hey man, I thought you should know. Things are bad at your parents' place." My heart sank. "What do you mean bad?" He exhaled. "Lily's boyfriend ran off. Took whatever money she had left, including some your parents gave her. They refinanced the lake house to help her start a business. It went under. Now the bank's coming for them." For a second, I couldn't even respond. It was surreal. The same people who destroyed my inheritance were now facing the exact kind of downfall they'd once accused me of being too cold to prevent. I thanked Mark, hung up, and just sat there in silence. 2 days later, the inevitable happened. My mom called. Her voice was small, cracking. "Daniel, we're in trouble." I know," I said quietly. "We didn't mean for it to go this far. Your father's blood pressure, he's been so stressed. Lily's been trying. She just made bad choices." I closed my eyes. "Mom, you didn't make bad choices. You made the same one over and over. You've just never had to pay the price until now." She started crying. "Please, don't say that. We need your help. You're the only one who can fix this." For a moment, I almost felt the old pull, the guilt, the urge to be the good son. But then I remembered the day I stood outside that sold house, my name erased from the mailbox. "I can't help you," I said softly. "Not this time." There was silence, then a sob. "You're really going to let your family fall apart?" I stared out the window at the city's skyline. "You already did that," I said. "I'm just not cleaning up the pieces anymore." I hung up before she could answer, and for the first time, the silence that followed didn't hurt. Deserved, it had been a few weeks since that phone call, and I thought maybe they'd finally give up, accept that I wasn't their safety net anymore. But one evening, there was a knock at my door. I opened it, and there they were, my parents, standing side by side in the dim hallway, like ghosts from a life I'd buried. Mom looked fragile, her makeup smudged like she'd been crying for hours. Dad, usually proud and stiff, looked smaller somehow. Behind them, Lily stood a few steps back, arms crossed, face half hidden under sunglasses even though it was night. "Daniel," Mom said softly. "We didn't know where else to go." I didn't say anything. I just stood there, the weight of years of manipulation pressing against my chest. Dad spoke next. "We lost the house. The bank took it. Your sisters. Situation made things worse." Lily cut in sharply. "Don't make this about me, Dad." That familiar tone, entitled dismissive, snapped something in me. "You made it about you," I said, my voice trembling. "You always have." Mom reached for my hand. "Please don't do this. We're family. Family." I laughed bitterly. "You sold my inheritance, lied to me, and told everyone I was unstable. You don't get to use that word anymore." She started crying again, and for a moment I almost caved, almost reached out like I used to. But then I saw Lily roll her eyes, whispering under her breath, "Drama as usual." It did it. "Get out," I said quietly. "All of you. I'm done." Mom's sob turned into a gasp. Dad stared at me like he didn't recognize who I was. "You're heartless," he said. "No," I replied. "I'm finally free." When they left, I sank to the floor, shaking. The silence that followed wasn't peaceful. It was devastating. I had just cut off the last thread connecting me to my family, and even though I knew it was the right thing, it felt like dying. The night they left my doorstep, I didn't sleep. I just sat there on the couch, staring at the front door, waiting for the guilt to creep in. It didn't. Not like before. There was sadness. Yes, a deep, aching sadness that felt like mourning something that had already died years ago. But guilt? No. That part of me was finally gone. Over the next few months, I focused on small, ordinary things, cooking meals that actually took time, reading before bed, walking to clear my mind. It sounds boring, but it felt like rediscovering parts of myself I hadn't seen since childhood. The part that wasn't always fixing something broken. Therapy helped too. My therapist said something that stuck with me. "You didn't abandon your family. You stopped letting them abandon you." That line replayed in my head every time I doubted myself one weekend. I drove past my old neighborhood. I hadn't planned to, I just found myself there, like muscle memory. When I turned the corner and saw the house, I had to pull over. It was different now, freshly painted, flowers in the yard, kids' bikes on the driveway. A young couple lived there, laughing as they set up a small barbecue in the backyard. For a long moment, I just watched. And for the first time, seeing someone else in my home didn't hurt. It felt right. That house had always been about family, about love and safety, and now it finally had that again. As I sat there in my car, I whispered, "Grandpa, I think you'd understand." The pain didn't disappear overnight, but it started to fade. What replaced it was something quieter, peace. The kind that comes when you finally stop trying to earn love that should have been given freely. Still, couldn't shake the feeling that this peace wouldn't last forever. Because if I knew anything about my parents, it was that they only came back when they needed something. 2 years passed in quiet clarity. I had built a life of my own, a small circle of real friends, a steady job, and an apartment that finally felt like home. I thought the storm had passed for good, but life and family have a way of circling back when you least expect it. It started with an email. The subject line read, "Please, Daniel, we need you." I almost deleted it without opening, but curiosity got the better of me. The message was from my father. The tone was different this time. Not angry, not defensive. Just tired. He wrote about how they'd lost nearly everything. The mortgage, their savings, even Dad's job. Lily had vanished again, leaving them with her debts. "We're old, son," the email said. "We can't keep going like this. Please, come home." For a few days, I didn't respond. I didn't know how. Part of me felt the old reflex, that instinct to fix things, to rush in and save them. But another part of me remembered standing in that dark street, staring at the house they stole from me. Eventually, I agreed to meet them. We sat in a quiet cafe, one of those places that felt too normal for a moment, that heavy. Mom looked frail, her hands trembling around a cup of tea. Dad looked defeated, no authority, no pride. "Daniel," Mom began, her voice cracking, "we just want to start over. Family should be together." I took a deep breath. "You had a family. You sold it." She looked down, and for once, had no defense. Dad finally spoke. "We made mistakes. But we're still your parents." I nodded slowly. "And I'll always wish you well. But I can't be your savior anymore." As I stood to leave, Mom grabbed my hand. "Please, don't turn your back on us." I looked her in the eye and said, "I'm not turning my back. I'm just walking my own way." Then I left quietly, firmly, without looking back this time. It's been 3 years since that final meeting in the cafe. I haven't spoken to my parents since, and honestly, I don't think I ever will. Not out of hatred that burned out long ago, but because some bridges aren't meant to be rebuilt. They were made of trust. And once that's gone, all you're left with are ashes. I built a new life from those ashes. I bought a small house on the edge of town. Nothing fancy, but it's mine. The first night I slept there, the quiet felt sacred. I stood in the doorway, boxes still unpacked, and whispered to myself, "This one stays with me." It wasn't about property anymore. It was about reclaiming the part of me that believed in safety and home, in peace that couldn't be taken away by someone else's choices. Sometimes I think about my parents. I wonder if they still live in the same apartment Mark mentioned, if they still think I'll come back someday. Maybe they sit by the phone, waiting for a call that's never coming. A few distant relatives still message me saying things like, "They're sorry, you should forgive them." But forgiveness isn't the same as forgetting. And it doesn't mean I owe them my life again. One weekend. I planted a small lemon tree in my backyard, the same kind that grew outside my grandfather's old house. As I watered it, I thought about him. About what he'd say if he could see how things turned out. Maybe he'd be sad about what happened to our family. But I think deep down he'd be proud that I finally learned when to stop giving everything away. The sun was setting that evening, golden light spilling across the yard. And for the first time, I didn't feel angry or broken. I just felt free. I may have lost my family home, but I gained something greater, a peace no one can sell, and a strength that was mine all along.